Amalek was the first person in the Bible to attack the children of Israel when they left Israel. And who did he attack? Exodus tells us. He attacked the women, the children, and the stragglers. He attacked the weak and defenseless. God says he will be at war with Amalek in every generation. And who is a descendant of Amalek? Haman in the book of Esther, who tried to commit genocide, the first time a genocide against the Jewish people. Yes, we were enslaved in Egypt, but never a genocide. And this is history repeating itself before our lives. This is the spirit of Amalek that we are witnessing with Hamas and Iran today.
Right now, Israel is targeting Hamas, but this thing could broaden. You think of Hezbollah, and you think of the entity we know as the head of the snake, the Iranian regime. Do you have concerns about this expanding to include what can only be called a showdown between Israel and Iran? And I know you also have some insights into Iran's role biblically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is no doubt that this conflict is going to broaden, that is going to open up another front, probably in the north with Lebanon and Syria, because both Hamas and Hezbollah are really proxies of Iran. And so one of the challenges, like in medicine, you can't just deal with the symptoms. Then you'll never get rid of the disease unless you can get to the root cause. And the root of this issue, the root of this conflict is with Iran. And I believe one of the reasons why this is happening now is because Iran is terrified of the Abraham Accords and any sort of coming together in relationship, any sort of peace that could exist between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf states. It's one of their worst nightmares. They're trying to derail that at the moment. But of course, there is something even deeper here on a spiritual level, because Iran is biblical Persia. And so we know that on the biblical perspective, Haman came out of Persia. And so it's something very interesting. In our show, God's Appointed Times, we go through the biblical holidays. Well, the biblical holidays are meant to be prophetic timepieces, a prophetic picture of redemption. And what's interesting is that Passover, the day God brought Israel out of Egypt, the day Jesus died on the cross, happens on the 14th day of the month of Nisan. 14 is the number of the hand in Hebrew. It happens in the first month of the Hebrew calendar. The last holiday of the biblical calendar is Purim. And that deliverance happens on the 14th day of the month of Adar, when God delivered Israel in Persia from Haman. This represents something very significant prophetically. Passover represents redemption at the beginning of history. Purim at the end of the calendar represents what's going to happen at the end of history. So it's no surprise that Iran, Persia has risen up again, in the spirit of Haman, which is the spirit of Amalek, is alive today in the world, coming after the Jewish people. They wanted to wipe out every Jewish man, woman, and child, and that's exactly the same spirit that we see going on with Hamas and Iran today.
And folks, where does the United States stand in this conflict right now? Well, there are right now U.S. warships heading towards the Eastern Mediterranean to aid Israel. And number two, the first shipment of U.S. ammunition just arrived in Israel a short time ago. Rabbi, this makes me think, as we're blending the news and the prophetic here uniquely on TBN, it makes me think, of course, of Genesis 12:3. God will bless those who bless Israel. He will curse those who curse Israel. History bears that out. And hopefully this is a blessing to the U.S. to assist Israel like this.
Absolutely. There is that promise. And I believe one of the reasons why the United States has been blessed is because historically, America has been one of the greatest allies of Israel throughout Israel's existence. And so I believe now is more important than ever for the United States, especially for believers, to stand with Israel, because things are going to get way worse before they get better.
Yeah, you look at the ash heap of history in terms of the latter part of that verse, Rabbi. God will curse those who curse Israel. Where are the Nazis today? Where are, I don't know, the Romans, the Philistines, Haman? They don't exist, but against all odds, the nation of Israel is still here. And by the way, Hamas is soon to join the ash heap of history as well. Speaking of Hamas, you just gave us the background on Iran and the biblical significance of Iran, Persia. Hamas in the Bible, the meaning, the utter meaning of the term Hamas. Unpack that for us a bit.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that the word Hamas is actually a biblical word that goes back to Genesis chapter 6. Now, the first thing you have to understand is in Arabic, Hamas is an acronym for the Islamic freedom movement that Hamas represents. And it also can mean bravery in Arabic. But again, Hebrew and Arabic are cognate languages. They are related. And so I don't think it's any coincidence that Hamas, that term of this organization, is in the Bible. In Genesis chapter 6, God looked at the world in the days of Noah, and he saw that the world was filled with Hamas, which literally means violence. And God was grieved that he made man, and he brought the flood upon the earth. Now think about this, right? This word Hamas means violence. It's connected to Noah. Jesus says, as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days preceding the return of the Son of Man. So if in the days of Noah, there was literally Hamas violence, senseless hatred that existed in this world, this is exactly what we see being perpetrated by this organization. And it is so significant. And we mentioned how this attack happened on Simchat Torah. Well, one of the Psalms we read at the end of every prayer service on Simchat Torah and throughout all of Sukkot is Psalm 27 that talks about the prayer saying, deliver us from Hamas, deliver us from violent people and from the violent individual. So on the day, and part of the name that was used by Hamas in their attack was flood, which then ties back to Noah and the days of the flood, and God is grieved. God is grieved at the actions of Hamas, and he is not going to sit back and take this lightly. God is going to help Israel defeat her enemies.
Folks, this is the kind of information that you're not going to hear anywhere else on any other network, and that's why we're so glad that you're here, Rabbi Jason Sobel. And by the way, speaking of the chaos, the literal meaning of Hamas, look, I mean, I think we have to lay it out for people. This is no time to mince words. If anyone is kind of on the fence about this, if they think there's gray areas, consider this. As we mentioned at the top, Hamas beheaded babies in this onslaught. They burnt children alive, they murdered Holocaust survivors in their beds, and they carted some 130 people back to Gaza into the bowels of hell where they are being held hostage right now. Rabbi, this is just pure, there's no other word, demonic evil.
Well, absolutely, and this goes back to what we see in the Bible. The ultimate embodiment of Hamas in the Bible was a man by the name of Amalek. Amalek was the first person in the Bible to attack the children of Israel when they left Israel. And who did he attack? Exodus tells us. He attacked the women, the children, and the stragglers. He attacked the weak and defenseless, those who could not defend themselves, those that were completely helpless. And this is why that is so significant. God says he will be at war with Amalek in every generation. And who is a descendant of Amalek? Haman in the book of Esther, who tried to arouse the Persian Empire to destroy, commit genocide, the first time a genocide against the Jewish people. Yes, we were enslaved in Egypt, but never a genocide. And this is history repeating itself before our lives. This is the spirit of Amalek that we are witnessing right now in current days.
So what you're saying is that this is not just clearly a physical battle. Look, right now, Israel is preparing for a massive ground invasion of Gaza. This is the first time in 50 years that Israel has officially declared war. But there are spiritual entities moving behind the scenes here. There's a great spiritual struggle. I think about the book of Daniel, the prince of Persia, and angels contending with these demonic forces. So there is an unseen battle beyond the war in Gaza right now.
Absolutely. There is a battle in the spiritual realm. There is a battle for people's hearts and minds. Jesus talks about before he returns, there will be a great deception in the world. I believe part of that deception is turning the hearts of the world against Israel and the Jewish people, because that is what the Bible talks about. What's interesting is that the biblical holiday of Sukkot is connected to the number 70. And biblically, the end times war is called Gog and Magog. Hebrew's alphanumeric. It means letters and numbers are interchangeable. Gog and Magog in Hebrew equals 70. It's all the nations of the world coming against Israel. And what does Zechariah 12 through 14 tells us? It's going to happen on the Feast of Tabernacles on Sukkot. So the very time the Bible says the nations are going to wage war against Israel, this is what we're getting. This is not the final battle, but it's a sneak preview of what is coming.